Hello, noble ones, and welcome to Metatron's Academy. I found something interesting for you. Now, of course, you know that oftentimes on this channel we watch videos from several other channels that kind of find and then re-upload, sometimes even modifying or improving on the quality of videos that are from the 19th century. In this case, we're again with the channel Life in the 1800s. Let's give him a like and let's give him a comment and possibly go and watch him. You'll find a link in the description, pinned comment. And the video in question is titled "Witness to the First Airplane Flights." Talks about seeing it in 1903. So this man is old, I guess, during the interview. Let's see if they tell us when the interview was made. Witnessed the very first attempt that the Wright brothers made at powered air flight. Incredible. It happened on December 14th, 1903. Okay, so they don't say how old he was, but anyways, we could see he's already old when they did the interview here. If he was an adult in 1903, then it means he was born, of course, in the 19th century, which makes this very interesting. Now, the reason why I wanted to watch it before we jump into it, and I just let him speak without interrupting him for the first maybe minute and a half, we often look at how people describe technology that to us is a given, but to them it was new. And the words they use are always fascinating. Let's see what we can find today.
You're about to see a video of a man tell you about his experience of seeing the very first airplane flight in history. The year was 1903 and the man's name was Frank Wood. At the time, the Wright brothers had already been experimenting with what they called full-sized gliders, but none of the attempts up to that point were successful in achieving actual powered air flight. Being born sometime in the 1870s, Mr. Wood entered into the Pennsylvania Military College in the late 1890s. Not long after, however, he was called off to duty to fight in the Spanish-American War, where he was commissioned as a first lieutenant. After the war, Mr. Wood decided to open up a car garage, and through mingling with the car racing enthusiasts of the time, he met a man named Barney Oldfield, who was a famous car racer back then. Mr. Oldfield's claim to fame was being the very first driver in history to drive a car 1 mile in 1 minute, thus achieving 60 miles per hour, which was a big deal back in those days. Here's a picture of Mr. Oldfield sitting in one of his race cars in 1902, and you probably recognize the man standing next to him. That was a very young Mr. Henry Ford, who was at the time just tinkering around with race cars. The creation of the first Model T that he would completely change the world with was still a few years away. So one day in the late autumn of 1903, Mr. Oldfield and Mr. Wood traveled together to a farm in a little town called Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. Apparently one of them had found out about the experiments that the Wright brothers had been conducting there, and they both were quite lucky on that cold December day, for they both witnessed the very first successful test of the first airplane in history. So here he is, Mr. Frank B. Wood, to share
Never would I put myself in a machine like that with, oh my gosh.
with us his experience on that fateful day in 1903.
Please.
The interview took place sometime in 1975.
Well, we just saw the back end of
Thank
it
you for that.
sticking out of this barn. And they said, here's our flying machine. Oh, I said, it was a mowing machine. And they said, no, it's our flying machine. Well, it was a darn good big kite. That's what I thought it was. We had a little bit of trouble with the ignition. That was making break. Nothing but 2 pieces of metal striking together. And we got it to go in, and Wilbur said, let's try it. Well, he had built a track, he and his brother, up this hill. And under this airplane was one wheel, and it fitted in this track. We got it top the hill and got her started up and running all right. And Wilbur laid down to fly it, steered with his arms and feet. Barney said, let's go, and we shoved it off. And he was yelling all the while, let's go, let's go. And it went. I could run as fast as it was running when it left the ground. I knew it would fly. I knew it was light enough, and they had power. I could fly a barn door if I had enough power. He was for the Philadelphia Ledger, I think it was. He said, what are they going to do with it? I said, they're going to show it to the dear public, sell it to the government, and build a lot of them someday. Oh, he said, you're crazy, and he'll go by.
going crazy. Oh, absolutely fascinating. All right. So I've got a lot to say. I know it's very short, but yes, that's exactly what I was looking for. What kind of terminology are you going to use to describe what we just call an airplane? So the first one is here. Check this out.
Well, we just saw the back end of it sticking out of this barn. And they said, here's our flying machine. Oh, I said,
So they call it a flying machine. One thing you will notice then is that whenever there is a new piece of technology, oftentimes it's called not with a proper name, but with a descriptive name. Because of course, the public doesn't know what it is. So if he had called it a plane, what's a plane? Like, to us, it's obvious. To them, it wouldn't be. In this case, instead, it's telling you it's a machine that flies. It's a flying machine. It's describing it. Interestingly enough, that's still, if you look at languages like Mandarin, they call it a feizi, which literally fei is to fly and ji is machine. So there's still, some languages do call it like that still. In English, depending on where you're from, you'll call it an aeroplane or an airplane. Kind of depends, I suppose. But regardless of which one you prefer, at the end of the day, that is the word. And oftentimes we do shorten it to the plane, right? Get on the plane or get on the chopper if you are Schwarzenegger. But yeah, no, so that's one thing that we're noticing. And it does remind me of another video that we reviewed together as we were looking into the linguistics of it, which is what we do on this channel. And I noticed that the first recorders, right, when they record someone's speech, they call them a talking machine, because it's a machine. And either you do the talking and it records, or if there is a way to play it back, which often, of course, there was, then the machine now does the talking, right? And now we call them a recorder, or perhaps we call them a whatever the heck we use, and depending on which machine we're using. So this was the first thing that I wanted to point out. Let's see the next one.
it was a darn good big kite. That's what I thought it was. We had a little bit of trouble with the ignition. That was make and break, nothing but two pieces of metal striking together.
A good big kite. So that's another thing that people will do. And I imagine up to a certain extent we'll still do it. When we see something and we don't know what it is or what it's for, then we will oftentimes use the name of an object that we are familiar with to describe it. And this is something that people have done constantly. I mean, think about it, even when we create substitute language, which pisses me off, by the way, and by substitute language I mean when we have to say things such as he unalived himself because we can't say the actual word, otherwise the algorithm demonetizes you and that kind of stuff. Well, don't we actually say boomstick? Because it looks like a stick and it goes boom, right? And it's really the same concept, and it's what a lot of people do. Of course, we have to do it in a specific scenario, in fact, quite dystopic, if you think about it, when it comes to social media. But in general, we as a species, we've been doing this for a very long time. And I can already imagine, probably, there could be interesting subject for a linguistic analysis to imagine, well, what about medieval people? Because they invented a lot of things. What did they call their first types of architectures, their machines? They did have machines, like the first printing machine in the early modern period, or even if you want to look at wooden machines and siege and machines and stuff that was built in wood for battlements in ancient Greece or Sicilian Greece with Archimedes. Be interesting to see what they called it or how people called them when they saw them for the first time. And in fact, some of the names are descriptive. One of the type of ballista that the Romans used was called Scorpio, which means, of course, scorpion, probably because of the idea that it resembled the animal. And even this helmet, the early types are called pot helmet because they look like a pot. And maybe not this one too much, because this one is got a little bit of the elongated sugar leaf or sugar loaf shape. But you know, the ones that are flat-headed, sometimes they're called pot helmet or bucket helmet, because yeah, it is a bucket. See if he says anything else.
Oh, I said it was a mowing machine.
Yeah, that's the other one. A mowing machine. Like, to us, you see that it's obviously an early type of prototype of plane because we see the wings. It kind of a little bit looks like the further development, the type of planes that you see in First and Second World War. But to him, it looked like a mowing machine. A mowing machine. Isn't that, to us, this is so foreign, because do remember, the past is foreign. It's like a different place. And to us, it's alien, in fact. And we are aliens to it. So a mowing machine. See, look how perspective and personal experience, of course, changes monumentally the way you identify reality in order for it to make sense in your mind. Might connect to the concept of qualia. I mean, if we had time, that's another thing I'd like to discuss.
We had a little bit of trouble with the ignition. That was making break, nothing but two pieces of metal striking together. And we got it to go in, and Wilbur said, let's try it. Well, he had built a track, he and his brother, up this hill, and under this airplane was one wheel.
Interesting. He said, yeah, he already says airplane. Clearly, this gentleman is American. I'd be interested to see when this became the norm, and because, of course, still in England and in Australia, I believe in New Zealand, the preferred way would be aeroplane. Perhaps when you speak very fast, airplane. It kind of sounds like it still if you're speaking very fast. But if you enunciate, then yeah. But this is already a thing, and this man was born in the late 19th century, so that would be interesting to see how far back do you have to go before this is not a thing.
And it fitted in this track. We got it top the hill and got her started up and running all right. And Wilbur laid down to fly it, steered with his arms and feet. Barney said, let's go, and we shoved it off. And he was yelling all the while, let's go, let's go. And it went.
And it went all right.
I could run as fast as it was running when it left the ground.
Even that, I could run as fast as it was running when it left the ground. Wow. I really like the thing at the end when, yeah, I said, when he thought this guy really saw the future, they're going to show it to the dear public. I love that he says dear. Sell it to the government and build a lot of them someday. And he was absolutely right. In fact, almost prophetic. He was right. He was absolutely right. Maybe there are some things that we see today and we think the same way. Perhaps when we look at quantum computers, when we look at all sorts of brain technology, like when they plan a Neuralink and that kind of stuff, and we look at it and we're like, oh gosh, you're crazy. And then maybe in the future they'll build many. Who knows? Who really knows? Maybe they have their own words for it. They won't call it a brain chip. Maybe they'll call it something else that we can't really predict just yet. But for today, I want to say thank you again to Life in the 1800s channel for this interesting piece of old footage, and thank you all for watching and joining Metatron's Academy. Bye.